the granddaddy of them all. This is the best cut of kosher meat you can get. This is the rib roast, the boneless rib roast. You might recognize this as being a traditional steak, and that's where steaks come from. We just take a cut from there, and that becomes a steak. When you keep it whole, it's a roast. This is something that you can pick up at your local butcher. It's moderately priced for what it is. It's a really high quality cut of meat. What makes it high quality? First of all, look at this marbling. You see how you have little speckles of white fat in there that helps moisten the meat as it roasts. You see that it's not too fire engine red, which means it's too young and it hasn't aged at all. It would be tough. This is really a wonderful cut of meat. For a roast, you'll notice they leave a bit of fat on there that helps baste the roast. If it was trimmed down all the way, you'd get a very pretty looking cut of meat, but it wouldn't cook very well. And we're interested in a tasty cut of meat, not in a pretty piece of raw meat. Let's begin. Now, details are everything when it comes to good cooking. So there's very few ingredients, but we're going to pay very close attention to what we're doing. Number one, when you're searing something, which is what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is dry the meat with a paper towel. There's nothing quite as absorbent as a paper towel, and everybody has them handy. So we're going to dry that. That'll be our first step. Let's discard this. The next step is to preheat our pan and make sure it's getting hot. That will take about 4 or 5 minutes. Next step, choosing the right oil. Grapeseed oil is an excellent choice. It has a high smoking point. It could stand up to high temperatures, which is what we're going to be doing because we're going to be searing this meat in an extraordinarily hot pan to get that brown crust very quickly. We don't want this to take a long time. We want the entire process of browning the outside of the meat to take about probably 1 minute for the entire browning, maybe 2. So we're going to start by just coating the roast in oil. Notice I didn't coat the pan in oil, I coated the roast in oil. And we're just going to rub it in so it's even. This will help the salt to adhere later. It will also allow for even cooking. Just like when you suntan, you put oil on your body to get an even tan. We want an even roast, and that's why we're putting oil on the meat, because it distributes heat. It acts as a medium for heat to travel. Let me dry my hands real quick. Next stop is our pepper. Fresh cracked black pepper always makes a difference. Now this is a very large cut of meat. It's about 5 pounds. It'll feed around 10 people. And I always have customers in the restaurant asking me what to cook for a party for 10 people or 8 people. And this is the easy solution. This is the chef's solution. This isn't small little pieces of roast chicken. This is one item. I'm focusing on one item. And you notice how detailed I am about the seasoning. Now, people always ask me, how do I know when it's ready? And that's really a big question for people. How do they know when it's ready? Because they don't really understand what cooking is. So I'm going to explain it to you on one foot. Cooking a piece of meat is when you have the temperature of the oven penetrate the center of the meat. Sounds complicated, but not really. Here I have an insertion. I have a thermometer that is designed specifically for roasting meats. You'll see that it's set, it's calibrated at 32 degrees. I have it in some ice water with a little salt. That's always 32 degrees. Ice, water, a little bit of salt, it should read 32 degrees. Because water freezes after 32 degrees. It wouldn't be ice water. Mixing it around. That looks like it's about 32, 33 degrees right now. I know it's accurate. And this is what I'm going to use to see what the internal temperature of the roast is. And we'll talk about more about that later. I have tongs. I can use these too. Make sure you have a good set of tongs. You don't want to drop a heavy piece of meat into a scorching hot pan. My pepper's on. My last step is going to be my salt. Now, before I salt this, I want to point out that I'm seasoning on a rack. You'll notice that all the excess is falling to the bottom. perfectly coated, evenly, not too aggressive. Now we're going to put on our salt. I use kosher salt. I like the way it feels in my hand. I like that it doesn't stick too much. I like that it's not too fine. I like that it's pure. All professional kitchens in the world use a salt like this that you can handle and you can have a feel for. I'm very comfortable with this, and so is every chef that I've ever worked with. Now, don't be intimidated. This is a fat piece of meat. You'll notice I season from high, so it's even. See that crust? Okay, we're ready to sear. We have our pan heating up. Let's check to make sure that our pan is hot enough. A little bit of water. That looks hot. Now we saw that it was hot. Now let's make sure it's hot with our ears. That's more like it. Now, it's very important not to move it around. Let it do its work. Beautiful brown color. We're going to take that out of the pan, put it back on our rack. Don't throw that away. We're going to use that to make our sauce. So we finished searing our beef, and we're going to begin to make our sauce using the same pan that we roasted the beef in. We're going to capture all that flavor. We're not going to just discard this. We're going to deglaze it. Right now, if you look at the pan, which is a little bit hot, I should probably use something. You see there's this little nooks and crannies over there. We're going to try to bring that up and make that part of our sauce. You see we have just enough oil that came off naturally from the beef. We don't need to add any more oil. We're going to put in our onions. We're cooking with our ears. If you can get a sound of that sizzle, you know you're doing the right thing. Just going to stir them up so they're covered well in oil. I'm going to try to scrape off all those little bits on the bottom. I'm going to add just a pinch of salt to bring out the moisture from the onions. This will get people interested. Roasting meat, browning onions. This is old-fashioned food. This is the food of kings. This is the food of peasants. Everybody eats food like this, and everybody loves it. So we're going to saute these for about 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to insert it just to get an idea of what temperature this beef is at right now. Now, I'm not going to put it over here on the top. I'm going to try to put it somewhere that it gets the centermost part of the meat, right in there. And we're going to get a reading. You hear that? That means you're doing a good job. That's applaud. The food is applauding you. Looks to me like this meat is 60 degrees. A refrigerator is 40 degrees. For this to be properly cooked to medium rare, medium, you have to cook this to somewhere between 120 and 130 to 35 degrees. So we have an oven that's preheated at 350 degrees. We're going to finish making our sauce, put the meat back in, pull the sauce out, and go into the oven. Let's go back to our onions, see how that's progressing. They're starting to get soft. You'll notice there's no liquid in the bottom of the pan. I'm sauteing this. I'm not boiling it in its own juices. It's not overcrowded. There's a sound of a sizzle, and the sound of a sizzle means that you're creating flavor, really. So while these onions are browning, let's talk about some of the other ingredients we have. At this point, we'll add our garlic. Adding garlic at the last minute is critical because garlic tends to burn quickly, and we don't want to take that chance. We want guarantees. We want our food to taste good. We don't want to have to sit there and make sure the garlic doesn't burn. You'll also notice that at this point the pan is starting to get dry. I might lower the heat. I'm going to add a little more oil to make sure I don't have any burning. If this doesn't look delicious to you, then you must be a vegetarian. So, our onions are nice and golden. Our garlic has cooked to aroma. I could smell that. Now, I want a sauce that's a little bit thicker. Not thick, but not watery. So this is a classic French technique where you just take a little bit of flour and you just dust the aromatics here. Just dust them. Let it mix with the oil. Lower the heat a bit. Toss that around. A little more. I think 1 teaspoon should be enough. A little bit of tomato paste for color and richness. Put a little oil on that to help it cook. Mix that all in, taking very close attention not to burn anything. Working that tomato paste in. Remember, we're using the pan that we roasted the meat in, so we have a tremendous amount of flavor in here. If this was a professional kitchen, I'd be using a beef stock. But since we're cooking for the family, and chicken stock is a very neutral item, we're going to use chicken stock. But first, let's add the wine. Let's turn off the flame when we add the wine, just to be safe. About a cup, a half a cup to a cup. Let's turn that on now. We're going to scrape the pan with a silicone spatula, temperature resistant. Really effective. While that's simmering and reducing, let's throw in our bay leaf. Let's throw in some fresh thyme. If you like parsley, you could throw in parsley. I like thyme. How about that? If you want to take a little extra second right now, deglaze again and reduce. This is real cooking. This is what people who know how to cook do, and it's not very complicated. It's still just a roast with some caramelized onions. You'll notice most of our wine has reduced. It's pretty much a dry pan. We'll add our chicken stock. Turn off the flame. Scrape up all that good stuff on the bottom. Now we're going to be using this rack to roast in, so I have a nice saucepan to hold my sauce and simmer it a little longer. Need one more towel. A very rustic sauce, the way it is. We can cook that down to concentrate it. We could serve it as is. We're going to take our rack, put it in the roasting pan, take a little bit of water, put it in the bottom of the pan just to stop smoking in the oven. We have an oven that's been preheated to 350 degrees. We're going to cook that to an internal temperature of 125 degrees. It tastes delicious now, and it's only going to get better and better. We're going to use the drippings from the roast to further fortify this. We're going to let this reduce, and we're going to serve this either as a rustic gravy, or we could strain it and serve it as a refined sauce. We'll come back in about a half hour and check on our roast. Let's see how this roast is doing. Let's put that right in the center of the meat, in the most center part of the meat. Get a proper read on the temperature. That's 120 degrees. We're going to take that out, and we're going to let that carry to 130 degrees, because that's the way I like it, medium rare. This is the sauce we were working on earlier. This is the roast that we took out of the oven at 125, 120 degrees. And if you have a look here, you'll see that it's already reached 135 degrees. Won't be needing that anymore. Good job. Let's look at our sauce before we slice our roast. We took the drippings earlier, we removed the roast, we poured off the excess oil, put the sauce that we already had working in the pan, stirred it around, and put that back in the pot, and brought that to a simmer for another 5 minutes. Of course, we deglazed with just a little more red wine. A little more red wine never hurts, a red wine sauce. So we have a choice. We could serve this rustic, and we could just scoop it out and put it into a ramekin and have people serve themselves, or we can be fancy, and we could be restaurant style about it. First thing you want to do is defat. Remove the fat from the pan. Now, not all of it. You know, this is a sauce. And it's not meant to be an ultra-refined sauce. It's just a sauce that accommodates this fantastically beautiful piece of meat. No sauce is necessary to enjoy this cut of meat. You don't need a sauce to enjoy a beautiful cut of meat like that. It will be juicy, it will be flavorful on its own. But it's really not much more work to do this, and it just enhances the experience fantastically. Let's put that over here. We're going to go ahead and strain off the onions. See what the liquid looks like. What a beautiful relish these onions made. They absorbed the red wine. They absorbed that flavor, the herbs, the chicken stock that we worked hard on earlier today. That looks nice all on its own, doesn't it? And there you have a beautiful jus sitting underneath it. Put that aside just for a moment. Let's talk about this roast again. It's very important to note that we removed the roast at about 120 degrees, and then we let it rest in a warm area for about 20 to 30 minutes. That allows the juices to redistribute. It just allows everything to settle. There's a lot of activity going on in a roasted piece of meat. And you do need to let it set so that when you slice it, you don't have juices falling all over your cutting board. That's what these grooves are all about on this cutting board. They know that people do that, and they don't want all that liquid on the table and on the floor. That's why they create these grooves, just for this purpose right here. But I think you'll see that when we cut this, there won't be a lot of liquid. There won't be a lot of juices falling out. It'll stay in the meat. It'll stay juicy. We're hoping to have a beautiful pink roast here. The final temperature is around 135 degrees. Let's remember to remove these strings. Nobody likes to eat twine. unless you're a goat. Okay. Trying not to destroy that beautiful crust that we worked on. There's a ton of flavor there. See that right there? I don't want to lose that. That's delicious. Let's put that on our tray. So, we have a beautiful platter, a sharp knife. I say, we don't cut the ends. Let's just roll right through the middle. Let's have a look at that. Beautiful, juicy, pink roast. Isn't that something? See how it's not blood red in the middle and white on the outside? It's consistent. You could tell that that's delicious just by looking at it. Your decision. You want to cut it dry, you want to cut it thick, you want to cut it thin, you want to eat it as a steak, you want to eat it cold, it doesn't matter. What I like to do is take a big piece and show that you have a beautiful roast there. Cut it in half so you have a flat surface area to work with. And just come right down. Sharp knife is really going to help. Let's put that down like that. What a stunning piece of meat this is. You know what the best thing about cooking a roast is? You can satisfy a lot of customers. And when I say customers, I mean your guests. I've been in the restaurant business too long. Well, even if you enjoy your meat rare, you'll enjoy this. It's juicy, it's flavorful. Let's have another beautiful piece of roast there that we could show off our work. Let me dry my hands here. Take some of these beautiful onions, just use it as a wonderful relish. Isn't that just something else? Let's not forget the most important thing, an easy solution to good flavor. Fresh thyme sprinkled everywhere. Remember, these have been cleaned in advance. And they just sit in water like a beautiful bouquet. If you're cooking often, you just draw from it. I've been using this one for over 8 hours. It's been sitting here, and look how lovely they look. Vibrant. You like parsley? Parsley never hurt anyone. Dinner is served. 10 people. Come on over.